If we're providing more value and offering something to our patients that will get them better, help them reach their goals, stay healthy, be more active, like all these positive things, we got to get out of the mindset of we're just trying to sell something to make extra money. But no, we're providing more value. Why would you not offer this to your clients when you know it's going to help?
Kick it.
All right. Strata Stories podcast. I don't know if they knew what they were doing when they invited the three of us on, but we're gonna do them proud. Don't you worry. All right. So, know what we're talking about today, gentlemen?
We are talking about direct-to-consumer stuff. Love it.
Yeah. So, let's just start with the obvious. Why should a clinic owner right now even be thinking about cash-based revenue?
I mean, I think demands are there because people are constantly looking at margins in their clinic, looking at reimbursement decreases from insurance-based care and insurance-based reimbursement. So looking to add an alternative is kind of a next step, but there's a lot of reasons to be cautious when doing so. But at the same time, it's sometimes necessary.
Randy, what do you think?
Well, I think you're spot on. I think the number one reason people would look at it or are starting to look at it even more is, obviously, the margins have decreased, right? Because of the insurance reimbursement going down. So, but, I think there's a lot of other reasons maybe to look at it. I think it can, overall, I think adding some alternative revenue streams can improve employee morale a little bit. It can kind of maybe help with some of those, I don't know, I don't really like the word, but I'll use it here, burnout issues that we see in our younger PTs, maybe gets them out of that daily grind where maybe they feel like, something like this just kind of revives them a little bit. So I think there are plenty of other benefits outside of just looking at it strictly from that, oh my gosh, my margins are getting less because of insurance. Now I need to add this line. And like Chris said, there's so much that goes into adding it than just popping it up one day and running with it.
I think that's a great point too, Randy, because I know you said you hate saying it or using the words, but it's so true. Like our job can get monotonous. If you're in the career just treating patient, every 30, every 60, whatever it is, patient after patient after patient, it's getting, that can add to the burnout phenomenon we're seeing. But doing something a little bit different is exciting, and it could boost the morale and liven things up a little bit versus just seeing the patient after patient. Even if it's and again, we'll talk about some ideas of cash-based revenue, but let's say they're teaching a class, right? Or they're offering some sort of medically necessary surgery. It's just almost like a breath of fresh air, not having to justify your documentation to Medicare about something you're doing, and you're still providing value to clients, right?
And I think there's a lot of clinicians out there that they have maybe some alternative skill sets that they want to use. It's not just the skill set of me being a physical therapist. It's maybe some alternative skill sets that they did in their schooling coming up or they've developed in their post-professional career. So I think there's a lot that actually desire it. They're just not being offered any way to use it in their current clinical situation.
Absolutely. And that goes into all right, so let's roll into this. How does a clinic decide which cash-based revenue to implement into their practice? And I think Randy brought up a freaking awesome point. Look at your team. What are they passionate about? What skill sets do they have? What would they like to do? Get them involved with it. Because now you can get this additional source of revenue coming in and fill one of your employees' cup by allowing them to do something they're really passionate about. Right? Like if you got someone who's, I don't know, a tennis player, and is not doing as much tennis as they want to because they're working in the real world, but they have a passion with working with like overhead athletes, and they want to do some sort of overhead athlete tennis educational series, like something as simple as that, right? I don't know. Have you guys seen what's some examples of creative cash-based revenue streams? I mean, we're going to get into. Well, I definitely want to pick your brain, Randy, and your recovery center and your history with Hyperice and all that and all what you did. But what's some creative cash-based revenue streams you guys have seen?
I saw some clinics doing more education Exactly what you just mentioned, Michael. Education especially in the work world, in the industrial injury prevention programs, on-site injury prevention programs, partnering with businesses. It really taps into a market of people that are, working their butts off all day long, and they don't have the time. They feel they don't have the time to actually spend on themselves. So teaching them and implementing stretching programs and safety programs for them. Those are the types of experiences I've seen where clinicians have really done a great job of partnering with this community of industrial athletes, and ultimately serving them well, but also helping build their practice as well.
There's the direct to employer contracts, right? I mean, those can be an alternative revenue stream. I think, you touched on it earlier, the injury prevention stuff. How about screening for youth athletes, screening for collegiate athletes, whatever your community needs and demands are? What about baseline or orthopedic assessments for all of your clients, whether it be, prior to them coming in for rehab as an injury prevention thing, or it's a post rehab thing? And then maybe they're transitioning into an adult, return to sport, recreational sport program, or, there's performance training on the athlete side. I think there's all kinds of, you're only limited by your creativity, I guess. And really, if you
Right.
look at what your community needs are and how can you separate yourself apart, not only from your competition, but how can you meet your community needs, then I think you're bound to be more successful than if you just start thinking, how can I make the quickest buck on the alternative revenue side and offset my insurance reimbursement?
Right. It goes far beyond just the revenue coming in, especially when you're doing the educational work like you guys are talking about. Whether you're out on site to a high school or college sports team or at a local business industry, you're out in the community, you're marketing yourself, you're providing value. And also, too, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. A lot of these things can be done on a volunteer basis, meaning you don't charge, just as a community outreach, right? Just to let people know who you are, what you do something a little bit different. And then you have something related when they get in the door and become a patient or a client where you can generate some revenue on it. So I think there's a big overlap between the marketing part of this and actually just creating a sustainable revenue stream as well.
Well, and I think you're a very good example, Mike, of, like, think about where you found your niche, right? You did running analysis, right? I mean, you developed this niche in the market for runners, right? I think, again, I mean, and whether you did this or not, but I think you're along your same lines. If you were to do that and then say sponsor a 5K and have some of your
Right.
service offerings available there, and those kind of things. I mean, you're only limited by your creativity, but you're a prime example of how you can separate yourself from others in the marketplace.
Right. And I fell into that niche not because I was a huge passionate runner, because I was a big meathead football player in my previous life. I picked heavy things up and put them down and hit people with my head, probably too many times.
Good times.
But I fell into it because I mean, it's a long story, but it was through a connection of my wife. I had just started the practice, so I started. She sent this kid over for me to work with, and then thankfully, I did a good job with him. He sent me some of his teammates. He was at a local college. Then some of the graduates from this college were professional runners from all over the world, different countries. And I started working with them, and then it just steamrolled. So I saw the opportunity, and this goes into something like when people say, follow your passion, and you'll be successful. Or I became passionate about distance running because I was pretty good at it, and it was putting money into my business. Right? I don't know if that sounds too capitalistic, but that's what happened. So it was a clientele that I wanted to work with. I enjoyed it. I was good at it. I trained my staff, and then we basically developed this business around the runner. And then what I did is think about what else do the runners need. So then we started providing, which went into the cash-based revenue. So we had the Alter G anti-gravity treadmill, which was a cash-based service. I tried billing for that and realized that I wasn't getting reimbursed by the insurance companies for it, the way we were billing it. So we just said, screw it. It was too complicated. We turned it into a cash-based revenue, and the thing paid for itself 100 times over. And then we brought in massage therapists because all endurance athletes need to do some soft tissue maintenance work, right? And we couldn't justify doing the tissues under the medical necessity guidelines of our insurance company. So then we had that. We had strengthening classes for runners. We had stretching classes for runners. We had a nutritionist we brought in. So we just had this clientele that was filling our waiting rooms and filling our schedules. And then we just thought, what else do they need? And then we supplied it. And there were times in the business, I don't know if I'm proud or sad about this fact, where, whether the reimbursements were going down, schedules were off, if it wasn't for our cash-based revenue, it would have been tough to pay the bills certain months. So we really relied on it, and we doubled down, and we turned into, I forget what the numbers were, but a high percentage of our overall revenue was cash-based. Which, let's talk about this. It's a little bit easier to get reimbursed for cash-based revenue than it is through the insurance many times, right?
Yeah. If I could just say something, Michael, because I think what you said was exactly right. Like you saw a population, a community, you connected with them, you got passionate about yourself, about it yourself. Then you trained your staff. I think that's, providing clarity, providing, them with what success looks like of a program or something that you're going to implement within your clinic. You did all those things and that led to success. And also it was adjacent to what you were seeing in your clinic probably from a traditional insurance-based patient base that you were pulling in. So it was something that was adjacent to what you were already seeing. It wasn't something you were trying to just bolt on or wedge into your business. You organically grew that connection to that community, and you were able to offer something that was very valued
Right.
or led to
Right.
success. So
Yeah.
I think that's hats off to you and what you did in the past.
Oh, thanks. And then I didn't know what I was doing at the time. I just felt it was working. And I think what a key point there too, not necessarily directly related to the cash-based revenue, but training the team to do it, right? Because practice owners are wearing way too many hats and they don't have to do everything. I enjoyed it because I was like Randy said, I was patient. I needed something different. So when I started traveling to the local running stores and doing running classes, strengthening classes for runners outside of my clinic, yeah, it was marketing and got me out of the clinic. I had fun doing it and it was a revenue stream. So it's a win-win-win all the way around. And do you guys have any stories, whether yourselves, when you were in the clinics or with your clients, of failed like cash-based attempts? Because I'm sure there's some.
I can say that I've seen some of the clinics that I've worked with, consulted with, have tried to launch programs. And again, I think not intentionally, but it was almost perceived by staff as being just something that was unnecessary to the patient. And I felt like
Really?
the times that I've seen that, those attempts failed. And I think, looking back at it and having conversations with the practice owners, it was really low buy-in from the staff to understand the value. And again, back to what we said earlier, not clear, there was no clarity built around kind of what success looked like, and also the why. It has to be beneficial for the patient, and not just perceived as from the team's perspective of, just a revenue stream, only a revenue stream. There has to be some kind of value for, we as clinicians, we want to make sure we're doing things to help somebody, right? So from that perspective, how does it help that patient when they come in? So I think that was some of the things I've seen, some of the services that were provided that kind of failed in the past. And I think it was really, it came down to training and getting buy-in and understanding why they would need this service, and then being able to execute on that.
I would say probably to some degree, every alternative revenue stream that I've ever tried to implement failed by my standards, at least within the first 3 to 6 months, because it didn't produce as much as I wanted it to, or I projected it to in those first 3 to 6 months. And I think to Chris's point, a lot of that was maybe improper education to my staff, or not enough education to my staff on, not only from the business economic side of why would we do this, but, the value-based side to the customer on why we're doing this, and making them comfortable with having those conversations and building those values of trust with the patient on why this is occurring. I would say if you're going to implement an alternative revenue stream in your clinic, expect that it might not hit the projections that you wanted to hit within those first 3 to 6 months. But as long as you do it correctly, gather data, patient satisfaction surveys, KPIs, whatever you want to gather, and analyze that data and just keep moving forward. If you strongly believe it's going to meet a community need, and you strongly believe that you have the right staff underneath your roof to make it successful, then you keep moving forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Ren, you brought up a couple of good points there. One is getting staff buy-in, because you need that, right? And then I mean, this is a totally different topic, which we won't get into, but that could fall back on your onboarding, your staff culture. What are you doing to work on that to make sure everyone's on the same mission? And then how do you present this to your staff? Because if you come as the owner, like, we're doing this because we're going to make, $25 extra per person, blah, 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 and it's all about the numbers, or they're just going to.
It's a huge mistake. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, right. So you got to, like, what's the why? There's a need. Our patient clientele would benefit from this. There's a value we're providing. So I think getting that buy-in is huge. And yeah, I think I'm assuming a lot of these cash-based attempts by clinic owners are failing because they're approaching it just as a revenue-only type of motivation behind it.
I would say, it kind of goes to your point you made just a few seconds ago, which is the leadership side of things. Like, if you're not a strong enough leader to really see the value of maybe some alternative revenue streams, innovation, technology, whatever it is, but if you're also not a strong enough leader to build a culture underneath your clinic walls to make that successful, no matter what you try and do, it's going to fail.
Right.
And rather than sometimes look at the program itself and say, well, yeah, that wasn't a good fit, maybe take a step back and say, did I do the right things to make that successful? So I think there's that leadership quality that a lot of clinic owners maybe need to have before they even start thinking about doing some of these alternative revenue streams, or they need to find somebody within their clinic that they're going to make kind of the liaison and leader for that program if they just don't feel comfortable doing it.
Right. That's a really good point. You talk to a practice owner and they just, they're worried about revenue, like everyone is, right? So they're just going to come up with these ideas. I want to do this. Need more revenue, more revenue, more revenue, more revenue. Then, as you know, is when we like dive deep into these clinics and looking at their numbers, we're like, well, you got a 38% cancellation rate, brother. Like, you want to just keep adding more shit into that, or do you want to take care of why you have a 38% cancellation rate? And I think I'm going to give it toot our horn a little bit, but this is what we do. We help practices look at what's really going on. So the high cancellation rate, the low revenue is a symptom of something that's going on. And how many times you go in there and you find that the culture is just awful. The person, the leader is not really leading, wearing too many hats. There's dissonance and people, that's not a fun environment. No one's on board. So how are you going to be able to add a cash-based revenue or think outside the box when your basic tenets of this business aren't even working well?
That's spot on. Exactly. And I think back to kind of what Randy was saying too, like just clear ownership of something, like not knowing who owns a new service that's being rolled out. A lot of this stems from leadership. You're right. I mean, and ultimately some people just are in the weeds and they don't see that about their own practice, that there are issues bubbling underlying in their everyday with their staff and with the way that they conduct themselves and how they express the needs of the clinic. So I think that having a great clear pathway for people to understand exactly how cash-based services can help a practice and how it can help the patient is needed. Workflow integration, I think that's something that's needed as well, making sure there's some kind of system in place and then scripts for people so they understand exactly how to roll something out as well.
Yeah. And authentic scripts, right, Chris? Like, it can't be scripted to the point where it feels robotic. It's got to be very authentic. And I think, if you kind of look at these alternative revenue streams as kind of solutions to meet patients' needs versus, like you guys have consistently said, like, don't look at it strictly from the monetary standpoint. I mean, we kind of know from the data, right, that 35% of your, say, net revenue, if that's from some alternative revenue stream outside of the traditional insurance method, you're doing well, right?
Absolutely.
And we also know, I think the APTA maybe a couple years ago ran a study, 50% of clinics had stated that they were trying to run, some cash-based service lines, alternative revenue streams, and 25% of those reported that they didn't meet the expectations financially that they thought they were going to, which kind of goes back to the point, you maybe just rushed into it for the wrong reasons. It failed, so you just threw it to the side and said, no more, without a clear plan. So if that's how to Mike's point, if that's how you're running your clinic, not collecting data and not collecting outcomes, not building off of any of that kind of analysis, you've got more issues than just cash-based service lines.
Right. You know what, too? I don't know if it said this in this study, but I think this is an obvious statement I'm going to make here, but how you're marketing and presenting this cash-based revenue is pretty important, right? Like we as therapists, it's all about pain. Oh, back pain. I'm going to do a back pain seminar, or we're going to do a foot pain clinic. People don't really get excited about the word pain. I mean, if they're in enough of it, then yeah, but just how you word it versus like, instead of doing a foot pain clinic, we're like optimal foot performance for pickleballers, or or keep your back strong and healthy for golfers, like something to tap into what the patient really wants. Yeah, they don't want to be in pain, but what do they really want? They want to be able to play golf, play pickleball, run, pick up their kids, pick up their grandkids, whatever stage of life they're in. So just the way we present it, and I think in general, I mean, I've met a whole bunch of good marketing minds in the PT world, but for the most part, I think the majority, we don't do a really good job on the marketing side. We need to hire creatives to do that for us. At least me. I'm not a very good marketer, but that's just the point I'm trying to make is the message and how we're actually getting this in front of people is extremely important, which is going to predict if it's going to be successful or not.
I've seen clinicians like just instinctually shut down when you tell them, hey, you have to sell this program or you have to sell this service or even just bringing up the fact that, this industry requires, you need to sell. You need to be able to kind of express the value that you bring to the table every day. I think that's one thing our industry does a terrible job of. Clinicians, physical therapists really have always traditionally not done well with that.
Because Chris, we're clinicians, we don't sell.
We're right. But they don't understand they sell every day. I always told stories about how, like, I would see a clinician outside of the office and talk to them about what they do. And they would go into great detail about how they help this patient and that how the physical therapy, benefited this patient to return to either work or do something with their family or whatever. When I hear them talk about it, when they're not thinking about it, they're selling. They're selling the benefit of the industry, the benefit of what we do. And I feel like, if they really just kind of thought about as selling to help people as opposed to just selling to make revenue, it really makes a little bit more sense to clinicians. So I think that's one thing we should really consider when we, as clinician owners or consultants, as we've talked to staff about how they could implement programs or even just, talk about the industry in general.
I mean, that's been the age-old story in our profession. Anyone who's listening, if you're actually watching, you can see we got a lot of gray hair here, the three of us. What do we have? 86 years of 87, whatever it is, 86 years of combined experience. So we've seen a few things in our day, but this has been the same old story. Like clinicians don't want to quote sell, because selling is a 4-letter word in our industry, but we're not selling bad things, right? And yes, we're selling all the time. During your evaluation, you come up with your plan of care, you're selling that plan of care, right? The front desk person is selling. Selling is everything in any business. And people look at it like such a bad thing. But if we're providing more value and offering something to our patients that will get them better, help them reach their goals, stay healthy, be more active, like all these positive things, we got to get out of the mindset of we're just trying to sell something to make extra money. But no, we're providing more value. Why would you not offer this to your clients when you know it's going to help? And we'll tie this into something in a second. But again, so yeah, selling is not a 4-letter word, but everyone in our industry thinks it is. And when you have a relationship and you build that therapeutic alliance, you have trust. They're going to want more from you as the clinician. And they're going to trust in you as a clinician. You have that trust. So it's not like you're trying to sell them narcotics and something dangerous. You're selling them health promoting whether it's education or services or products, I think then that's a tough mindset that I've always battled it with my own employees, and I see it in the clinics I'm consulting. It's just getting them on the mindset we're providing value and not just selling a product to increase revenue. The bonus is we're selling a product that's going to increase revenue. So let's talk about that. Do you guys have any comments on that?
You spoke of another 4-letter word that needs to be removed from the branding marketing paint, right? Let's remove the word sell, and now they try to upsell, downsell, left sell, right sell, like change it so it sounds a little bit sexier and less, salesman like. But at the end of the day, just I think if you're launching something new, just reframe it a little bit. I mean, to your point, we're empowering these patients with choices that are the best, we feel like are the best for them, rather than them go out to Dr. Google, Professor Wikipedia, and try and find what's best for them. We are empowering them into helping make the decision that's right for them at the end of the day. We're really not selling anything. And I think if that's part of the educational process, not only to yourself, but also to your clinicians who are going to be involved, I think it's easier then for those conversations to happen organically.
What do you got to say about that, Chris?
Well, I think you mentioned just trust, right? I think that's an integral part of the relationship that you build with your patients and the community around you. Not only patients, but also referral sources, people, physicians, PAs, nurse practitioners, people in the community, businesses, whatever. When you really look at how things are rolled out or implemented in a clinic, if they're forced, if there's no clarity around, the program and how to roll it out, if there's no ownership, who owns the rolling out of a program, I think it's perceived as negative and it can fail. But if a patient expresses that, hey, I'm injured, I'm here, I'm in this situation, I don't want to be here again, well, then some of these services might make great sense to them, and there's trust built by the care that you provided, and then you can add on a cash-based service, letting them know exactly, hey, your insurance doesn't pay for this, but this is what we can offer you, and this is the solution that meets your problem. So I think that's real important, that trust built, and then having that kind of that process of how to roll out a program.
Right. You brought up a super key point twice is who owns it, right? Just like any process in the business, who's responsible for this? And someone has to be, and there needs to be clarity on that with the whole team versus, oh, I thought you were going to put something on social media. I thought you were going to develop this. I thought you were going to do this. Yeah, it goes on to clarity. Exactly. 100%. All right, so let's talk about this real quick. Selling products. I think every clinic has tried or should be trying. What do you guys feel about having a little showroom of products that the clinic uses and endorses and offers it to the patients?
Well, I feel like retail is probably the most popular one that people have probably tried. I also would suspect, at least from the clientele or the clients that I've worked with, it's also the one that I would say has underperformed probably the most for people. I think when you approach retail, I think building a relationship with the right vendor is important. So maybe you can get your cost of goods down at a good price point to start. I think it goes back to how did you frame the reason why you're going to start your retail business in the first place? Is it just because you are trying to make a few extra bucks on the side? And add to that lifetime value of that patient, or are you actually providing something on top of what that patient actually needs and giving them something that's clinically appropriate, whether it be a brace, whether it be some recovery equipment? It's the whole, why did you get into the retail in the first place? How did you educate your staff? Are they implementing it at the very beginning of the conversation with their patient during the initial eval? Hey, this is stuff we have available, and we may look at this as an option down the road, but just understand, be transparent. This would be, not covered by insurance. Is it at the very end? Are they using some of this retail equipment during the rehab so the patient can feel it, experience it, understand its value? I mean, how is it being laid out to the patient and the timing of it? I think there's a number of reasons why it could fail.
Absolutely. I think you brought up a key point. They need to try it, right? So we can recommend a product all day long, and if we're not selling it within our office, what are they going to do? They're going to go onto Amazon, right? Do you know how many probably millions of dollars the PT industry has lost to Amazon by people not having those products in their freaking office? But yeah, so let's say, like, I know, Randy, you and I have had a long time relationship with Hyper Ice, right? Great recovery products. I can't tell you how many massage guns I sold over the years, but we all used them. We had one in every clinic. We used it on our clients, and they always just say the same thing. At first, I got it just because I wanted to use it in the clinic. And then all of a sudden you're using it on someone, like, wow, man, this feels awesome. Like, where can I get one of these? Oh, go onto Amazon or go onto the website. No. So we started getting that retail programs, and we just start saying, oh, we got them right in the closet. Like, here's the price, and people in general underestimate the value of convenience too, right? Oh, they can get it online for a little bit less. So they can go here and get it for a little bit less. Yeah, but they're going to walk out in their hand with it for $4 more. I would spend $4 more to walk out of a visit with something that I needed versus going online, looking it up, making sure it's the right one. So I can't tell you how many times people would look at our massage guns and then go on Amazon and buy the one that looks like it, that was like a knockoff. And they're like, yeah, these things are awful. It lasted 2 months. You don't take our advice and buy the quality products. You bought the bad ones. Well, Chris, you have anything to add about retail?
No, I just think any kind of add-on retail, if people think it's optional, or if they don't have an experience like you have, they haven't felt it, they haven't used it in the clinic, then sometimes they don't understand. It becomes kind of just clutter in a clinic then. I just think it has to be something that they interact with in order for them to understand the benefit of it and the need of it, and then the convenience factor, like you said, Michael, and then they can just walk out with it. That's the option.
And I think too, the visual, the optics of it all is important. Like, don't just throw something on a counter or on the checkout window or the check-in window. Like, actually have a little display set up. Sell t-shirts, have them hung up or put them on hangers there. You sell these products, like a lot of products will give you a display to showcase their products to your patients, right? Make it look good. Because if it doesn't look good, it's just less appealing for the client to buy it.
And you may have to invest in some to use as examples, like you said, not only the Hyperice products, but you might have to invest in some neoprene knee braces or ankle braces or whatever as kind of trials to use in the clinic with these patients, and run them through certain drills and make them aware of, empower them to be a part of that decision, that ultimately they come to you and say, where do I get this? Then you're not, quote unquote, selling anything, right? You're just adding value to their journey.
Right. Absolutely. Randy, real quick, so we're almost out of time, I think, but you had a very successful recovery room, right? I'm going to tell you did, because that's the truth.
Yeah.
So just tell us a little bit about it. I mean, like, as much detail as you want, but like, why was it successful? I'm sure it started off maybe not successful, but what were the highlights and what did you offer, and how did the staff take it? Like, just give us a quick summary of it all.
Well, I think again, I'll go back to your question. Have you ever had anything that failed? And this was one of my initial, I would call, underperformers when we first started. And then kind of backtracking a little bit and going through it again, the hard lumps that I had to learn. So, fortunately, we were able to have space to launch a good sized recovery zone. And it was a full setup: 4 chairs, massage chair, full Normatec gear, full Hyperice gear. We even had some game ready equipment in there. I mean, we had a full setup. So that would be offered then as a monthly subscription then to our clients. I had a TV in there first, PlayStation, for, mostly going to be the kids or whatever. Found out that was the worst thing I could do, right? Because it takes away from your marketing branding. You want the kids sitting there on their phone taking pictures of themselves while they're in there and sending it to all their friends, like, hey, look what I'm doing. I'm doing what the pros are doing, right? So quickly got rid of that. That was a failure. Never did that again. Never put a TV in there. Except now when we launch them in some of these team specific rooms, they want a TV in there that the coaches can put game film in. and have the kids
Yeah,
watch.
fair.
So it increases a little bit of the compliance of the use of the equipment. But then building a smaller scale model in the clinic that the patients actually got to feel all of the benefits of what they would feel if they continued using the recovery zone after rehab was over. And then having those discussions with them, even if you were a shoulder patient, you would jump on some Normatec equipment, maybe while you were icing your shoulder down in clinic, feel the benefits. The next session, come back, start having that conversation with the clinician on, oh, you enjoyed those? Yeah. Here's what you can do after your rehab is all over. Or even starting now, you can just come in whenever you want and jump on the recovery equipment.
So was that intentional, Randy? Was that intentional, like to give them a little taste so they can experience it, hoping they would
100%.
kind of sign on in the back end?
100%.
Yeah.
And I think taking it a little bit further, if you think about the clientele that really everybody can benefit from something like that. But we think about the people who are on their feet all day, your cosmetologist, your people in the beauty salons, your waitresses and waiters, anybody who's on their feet all
Right.
day. You go to those businesses and say, hey, for the week of X to X, you get free usage of the recovery zone. Come in, we'll teach you how to use the equipment. You get to use it for free. First responders, same thing. From X to X, you get free use of it. Come in, experience it, and then boom, it becomes, not selling again, but people are coming to you and saying, hey, I got great benefit from this. How do I get more? And either they want to get some for home use, or they just want to do the monthly subscription in your recovery zone.
And Randy, I'm going to interrupt real quick because you said something really important. It's not just about athletes. A lot of people work on the general population, right? We all need recovery. We all need these services. And yes, everyone is standing on their feet too long. Who would not benefit from some sequential compression at the end of a long week of work, right? And there's opportunities in these populations. It doesn't have to be sports medicine. It doesn't have to be these higher end, high performing physically individuals, right? When we got our Alter G, this is when I didn't put enough effort into it and I failed. But what we did is we worked with a weight loss program because I had this idea because I was putting all these runners on the Alter G, right? And we're dialing down their weight. And they're like, wait a minute, this is what I would feel like if I lost 30 pounds. Like, this is how easy it would be to run. I'm like, well, kind of, but you're a skinny endurance athlete. You can't lose 30 pounds. You have to cut your head off. So don't do that. But then I'm like, we can let people know what it feels like to be a little bit lighter on their feet. So we had one trainer who ran like this weight loss program in conjunction with a nutrition center near my office. We had all their clients come in and we put them on the Alter G. We found out what their goal weight was, and then we put them at their goal weight, and then we let them walk for like 15, 20 minutes and to feel what it was like as a motivator. And the coach said this worked great because they realized how good they're going to feel when they meet their goals. But then I got too busy with the running world and never followed up with it. But the point of the story was there was an opportunity, and it probably could have been pretty successful if I put a little time and effort into it. Or my mistake, not giving that ownership of that program to one of my staff members and letting them do it.
And then, I think one real important thing that I think clinics do sometimes maybe don't even think about, but they need to, is partnering with people in the community. You said you partner with a weight loss center, partnering with a running store, partnering with, whoever in the community that taps into a bigger population, especially, runners who are so committed, so loyal. It's important to partner with other providers too, which just expands the relationships, and then also brings more attention to your clinic, more business into your clinic as well.
Absolutely. 100%.
Well, and services complement each other. If you want to bring in, say, just, say your waiters and waitresses, or your beauticians and your cosmetologists, or whatever they're calling themselves these days, that, who in that category wouldn't benefit also from some baseline orthopedic testing to start identifying some areas that they should work on. They're doing the same thing every day at work, right? So now you can develop some sort of musculoskeletal screen, or I go back to the first responders, and their use of the recovery zone. Start a fitness testing program for first responders. I mean, start thinking about complementary service lines that go along with what you think the community needs and what you think that you can offer at a level better than anybody else in your community can.
Right. Absolutely. And yeah, there's so many jobs, professions, hobbies out there that are leading to cumulative trauma that we could tap into. It's not just the athletes. We did a quick thing early on in my career where we worked. There's like a Pepsi or Coca-Cola bottling delivery center somewhere in Rhode Island. And I saw one truck driver from there, and I was like, "Oh, here's an opportunity." So we showed up and did education. It was free. This wasn't a revenue stream, but we showed up for free, got to know the people in charge of employee health, and we are able to get patients in from this business because we went and talked to them about, and we actually went. I jumped on a truck and took pictures of me doing stretches and exercises on their trucks, and then we laminated them. And the whoever was in charge hung them on every delivery truck. And like, here's your self care exercises. You're on the road 12 hours a day. And it gave them directions like stepping off to stretch their calves out, showed them how to stretch their hip flexors using the running board on their truck, all these things. And it led to patients, right? So it wasn't an immediate revenue stream, but the return on my investment was 1,000 times over because it was a couple of free 2-hour clinics that I did at the factory. Point of that is get creative, and there's opportunities everywhere,
Very
right? And if you're providing value, you're doing something beneficial for them. There's no need to hesitate on offering these services. It's not selling, it's just enhancing their whole experience. I'm kind of going into a summary because I think we got to shut ourselves off soon. But I don't know. What's the give me the final thought?
I'll just say, I think, this is what we do, the three of us, with Fuel, we talk to clinic owners constantly who are struggling. They struggle because they don't know where to go next. They're looking at traditional income from traditional patients. And we all know that these cash-based services, or at least creativity in what they're offering, to your point, Michael, just doing something for free for a local business that could bring more patients in, building trust with them. That's what we do. We talk to clinician owners constantly, or clinic owners, I should say, constantly, about how they could build other revenue streams and at least improve upon what they have now. I think if you're trying to add a service, but your scheduling's a mess, there's chaos in your clinic, all these other distractions.
Get your house in order is what you're saying,
Get
right?
the house in order first before you start looking at adding something else on. Yeah, that's my final thought.
Awesome.
Oh,
Randy.
Thunder was stolen right there. I was just going to say, make sure your affairs under your four walls are in order. And there you see, I love being on the bike with you guys. Like it's so much fun. But you're exactly right. Like before you decide to jump into something that you think is going to be that saving grace and pull you out of the declining insurance reimbursement issues, make sure that your current affairs are in order, right? And there are people out there like ourselves that can help you do that and find the best way out, right? And then make sure you develop a plan before you do it. Do some pilot studies, implement some pilot studies as you're educating your staff. But really, as a clinic owner, be that leader. Figure out what staff you have and use their potential, right? Don't forget about data collections. We do it on the insurance side. Why would we forget about it on an alternative revenue stream side, right? Like, don't forget how important that is. And then really understand your community needs. At the end of the day, that's where you can really start to get creative with what you can implement.
Nice. Well, you stole a little of my thunder now too. Everyone's stealing a little someone else's thunder. So I'll go even way back. Clinic owners, like, drop the ego. Like, don't wear every freaking hat. Empower your staff. Do a better job hiring and onboarding so everyone's on. Everyone has buy-in on what the mission of the business is, and then those decisions you make are going to be in line with the mission. Everyone's going to be on board. Everyone's going to be in resonance. It's going to be less of a pain in the ass to get your staff to have buy-in to discuss, not even sell these services or products, but to discuss the value that we can continue to deliver to our clients. That's my takeaway.
Build the culture.
Awesome. Yeah, man, absolutely. Well, gentlemen, it's always a pleasure sharing the screen and microphone with you guys. Look forward to our next meeting on a on our personal levels and what we're doing. And yeah, thanks for spending Monday morning. We'll talk soon.
All right, gentlemen, fuel that fire. Keep rolling.
And thanks Strata Stories for having us.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Strata Stories. Strata PT combines your EMR and billing into one automated system to increase revenue and achieve a 99.99% reimbursement rate for physical, occupational, and speech therapy clinics. If you'd like to learn more about Strata PT and see how our EMR and billing services work, head over to stratapt.com to book a demo.